Welcome again to the Quebec 1 State Historic Site. This is a missile alert facility or a control center for 10 missiles and unmanned silos.
Can we join real quick? Just the three of us?
And 5 to 15 miles away from here. There isn't a missile or silo at this site. They're all in those silos. And it is a historic site, so please try not to touch anything. Even if it looks modern, it's all part of our exhibit and it's very hard to replace. This facility was built in 1962 to house the Minuteman I. In around 1970, it was retrofitted for the Minuteman III, and in 1986, it got the Peacekeeper. This is one of 5 sites that ever had the Peacekeeper Missile, and it is the only one ever available to the public. So,
did they use the same size silos, or did
no,
they have to? They had to make them bigger.
They
Yeah,
had to
that.
find them and like we
Okay.
equip the Peacekeeper.
That's what I thought.
1 second before we go on. Okay, sure. I believe we're out of this one. All right, moving this way, we'll get started. Past this door is the Flight Security Office. This is the first place that people would come when they were entering the facility. Inside there was a Flight Security Coordinator, or FSC, who was in charge of controlling who came onto the facility and who was not allowed to. Coming up to the gate, vehicles would have to radio in a code of the day and be authorized onto the post. They would open the gate remotely, they'd go park, and come up to this door, hand off any IDs and orders, and be allowed onto the facility. This office is also where the security forces personnel would operate out of. So if they were ever going out on patrol, if they were ever going to check the security of one of the launch facilities, they would operate out of here. Because of that, they had small arms and a rack over here. We don't have the rack or the small arms, but generally they would get them from this office, and they'd go out and patrol or go out to one of the launch facilities. Because it was built in the 60s, their main method of surveillance was looking out windows, so the FSC was provided many of them to look out and had very good visibility around the site. Out past these windows, you can see those posts with the white stripes around them, past the fence. Those indicate that Hicks cables, or hard intersite communication system cables, are buried under the ground in that direction. Hicks cables are the only connection this facility has with those launch facilities, and there's 2 of them per missile. They allow this facility to send the launch commands, and they also have intrusion sensors into the launch facilities that send a signal back to the capsule. Because of their very important nature, Hicks cables have an outer rubber sleeve that is pressurized, so in the case of it being punctured or cut, it would show up downstairs as a low pressure indication. The new facilities also have a monitor rack with 10 monitors corresponding to 10 cameras that are pointed at the nose cone head on the silos. So they now have cameras, but they didn't originally. And please don't touch anything. Before we have done the capsule, I'll let you know that it is a little cramped in spots, and if the elevator were to stop working, we'd have to climb 2 25-foot ladders. As long as everybody's okay with that.
I'm happy.
We'll go on down.
And that's one old monitor.
Yep. If everybody will go by and into the elevator in there.
Do you know where all the stuff is? Do you know where most of the Union stuff is?
We know where all this is.
That wall has some of the information for the distribution of nuclear weapons between the Soviet Union and the U.S. This is in 1990, so that's about the height of the Cold War and the height of the arms race. After 1990, they started signing treaties between the 2 countries, limiting the amount of active warheads. And in the early 2000s, they signed the New START Treaty, which limited the number of actively deployed warheads on missiles, and that effectively cut back the number of nuclear missiles that the U.S. could operate. And at that point, they deactivated the Peacekeeper missiles, deactivated all these silos, deactivated the facility, and in 2016, the state was given the option to purchase this facility from the Air Force.
That's how it's the state did it.
This wall has the signatures of many of the personnel that served in the facility, generally over the last few years of operation. And those could contain murals and other pieces of artwork, with one having a theme for Westerns and one being Star Wars, with one of the 400th missile alert facilities actually having a full Peacekeeper drone on there. So they got pretty creative with those.
Yeah, I also saw like the glowing.
Moving out of the elevator, please stay on the elevator side of this yellow line. That's so I can move the blast door without crushing anybody. This is the first of the facility's two blast doors. This one's 15 tons. On the outside of it, you can see the 90th Missile Support Group's emblem. They had the Jolly Roger with the cross bones instead of bones to be different from the Navy. And they started out World War II as a B-24 Liberator group, flying strategic bombing missions. They're still in operation, still operating out of F.E. Warren Air Force Base, and they are in charge of the 319th, 320th, and 321st Missile Squadrons, with the 400th that this was part of being deactivated with the deactivation of the Peacekeeper program. Moving into the facility, please watch your step on these two stairs.
That's a pretty cool door. Go ahead.
This is the first of our two Boeing exhibits. This is an IMU, or Inertia Measurement Unit, off an LGM-118 Peacekeeper missile. This is what gave the missile its positioning data. Basically, there's a gyroscope turning inside of that, and it tells it where it is in relation to where it was launched from. And the missile takes this positioning data and runs it through its guidance computer and guides itself to its target. It does this without any external signal, no radio, no GPS, and that allows it to reach its target without being interfered with through conventional means. The only other way a missile could be dissuaded from hitting its target was pretty much hit it with another missile or laser, and going Mach 25 at its fastest, it's pretty hard to do that. This is made up of 19,000 individual pieces, all hand-assembled in a clean room, and it costs about $7 million. For context, a Minuteman III, which is still in use today, costs about $7 million per missile. So this contributed greatly to the $70 million per unit cost of the Peacekeeper missile, which was one of the two major factors for why it was decommissioned. The capsule itself is shaped like a giant peanut, with the outer shell of that analogy being 4.5 feet of reinforced concrete. The nut on the other side would be the Launch Control Center and the Launch Control Equipment Building, both of which are suspended from the ceiling by large hydraulic dampers, used to keep the facility from shaking itself apart in the event of seismic activity from a nuclear blast or an earthquake. Going this way, as you pass by, you can see that off to the side, the floor is suspended above the ground of the capsule. And past this door in this room is a large AC unit keeping the facility at 55 degrees. It's kept at that temperature because the 60s era technology with the electronics and computers, it would overheat and burn up. Back here we have an auxiliary and brine cooler in case the main AC unit failed. And there's a diesel generator in case topside power is cut for you. Over here is our second Boeing exhibit. This is a Peacekeeper Missile Guidance and Control System, and it used the position data of the IMU to guide the missile to its target. It's extremely advanced for 1962, allowing a Peacekeeper to drop all 10 of its warheads within 300 feet of its target. But for modern technology, it's pretty rudimentary with only 12 kilobytes of memory. Along the walls, you can see those hydraulic dampers. This side has 12 smaller ones. The other side has 4 much larger ones that I'll show you when we get to the launch control center. Launch Control Center, we have the Quebec 1 Bureau. Quebec 1 was nicknamed the show place in the 90s, so whenever a visitor, Joint Chief, Russian inspector was brought out to tour one of these facilities, generally they'd be brought to this one due to its proximity in Cheyenne to the Air Force Base and to the airport. They're saying with only 30 minutes out, that's because once a missile left its silo of the U.S., it would take roughly 30 minutes before it would impact in Russia. It has a B-24 Liberator cockpit that they flew in World War II, and it has an LGM-118 Peacekeeper Missile that they operated towards the end of the missile squadron. Last man out, in 2006, Tech Sergeant Foster was allowed to sign his name. During that time, they stripped everything out down here. It's pretty much just the doors. And the topside facility was all boarded up. A few years later, Wyoming man took a trip down the ladder in the dark, gave himself a little flashlight tour, and signed in, unauthorized man in, just below. This is the second of the facility's blast doors. This one's 8 tons. Built quite similarly to the outside door. And on the front of it, you can see
That's your.
the 400th Missile Squadron's emblem. The 400th was the only one to ever operate the Peacekeeper, so it has the 10 rays of light coming down, representing the 10 warheads of the Peacekeeper missile re-entering the atmosphere and burning off their heat shielding. It also has a 2-person concept on it. That means that if you're caught past this point alone, you're subject to court-martial, because there is a lot of sensitive equipment past here and a lot of top-secret code books. The store can only be opened from the inside, and both missileers had to be present when doing so it was pretty hard to be caught past here alone. Moving into the Launch Control Center, please watch your head and watch your step. It's a fairly short hallway.
And I get to stay up in the corner. I'm just barely short.
There you go.
Barely short.
And outside the Launch Control Center, you can really see that our Capsule. It's 4.5 feet reinforced concrete. And these very large hydraulic dampers that hold up this side with steel chains connecting them to the roof. You can also see the intake and exhaust ducts. Those go through the launch control equipment building and then up to the surface of those big brown ducts up top. Moving into the Launch Control Center, this is where the 2 missileers spent their 24-hour shifts. They were down here that entire time, so the bathroom is right there. They had a bed that they were allowed to sleep in for about 6 hours during their shift, and one of them had to be awake at all times. Because of that, they, of course, put camper tape on these modules, because the one that was not awake would have to check that camper tape to make sure that the missile was on duty and had not tampered with it. These modules are all interchangeable, and if they broke, they would pull them out, take them down to Epi Warren, put in a replacement, and get the old one recertified. And generally they were down here for 24 hours, so everything they needed was down here. The chef was on call 24/7 to bring them down food if they needed it at any time. And they're down here to primarily launch missiles. So they're constantly doing drills, they're constantly doing checklists, making sure everything is working correctly. And in the event that they actually got launch orders, they generally come over the radio, they would write it all down and it would come in scrambled. They would have to unscramble it via code books that were down here at all times. Once they had it unscrambled, they would have the code at the top, time to launch, and special instructions for the launch, so which missiles to launch, which targets to pre-program, that sort of thing. They would come over to this red box. Each one of them would have a combination of one of the padlocks. They would open up their assigned padlock. Inside there would be 2 keys and a code puck. They would break open that code puck, check the code to the top of their orders. If that was verified, they would take their 2 keys. They would program in which missiles to fire, which targets to target, and then the deputy commander would take his seat, which is that one, put it right here, lock it down to the rail, and strap in. The commander would do the same with his chair, which is over here. He would put his key in this key at the time specified on the orders according to that clock into the account. They would turn their keys. This wouldn't launch any missiles. They'd take another map doing the exact same thing in the 400th Squadron at another site, for any missiles to launch. That means that if both of them launched all their missiles at once, that's 20 missiles headed towards Russia with 200 warheads that would impact in 30 minutes.
What happens if the chair gets derailed?
It wasn't going
It
to.
was highly unlikely, buddy.
You said when they launch here, they don't actually launch. You needed somebody else also launching?
It takes 2 of these facilities turning keys at the exact same time for any missiles to launch.
Really?
There's 2 other ways that missiles could be launched. One, there were aircraft in there at all times during the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
They're still active today, they're just not constantly flying, called looking glass.
Yes.
And they can launch individual silos and launch them all at once without a map voting on it. In the event that the other maps of the 400th Squadron were taken out, or they were deactivated at the time, say they were being decommissioned or they were down for maintenance or something, this one could launch by itself as well. For about a year in 1987 when they were getting the Peacekeepers, this was the first one that was activated, and it was the only one that could launch Peacekeepers, and is on the 2-key turning system. But generally, when there are other maps functioning, it takes 2.
So it'd take 2 of these control centers to launch the missiles.
Yep.
Okay.
Commander also has a Higgs relay board.
Did not know that.
If any of those low pressure signals came in, like I was talking about upstairs, they would show up on that board. He'd call up to the flight security office and get personnel sent out to verify the integrity of that site. If they thought nuclear missiles were incoming and a blast was imminent, they would evacuate topside personnel. The doors would be shut and locked in any normal operation, but if they were not, they would shut them at that point. The facility would shut off intake and exhaust from the surface, and it would recirculate air within the capsule. With an additional O2 generator and auxiliary O2 bottles, it had enough air for 2 people to survive down here for 3 months. And under the floorboards, there's food and water for the same amount of time. After that food and water is exhausted and the air is starting to get pretty stale, if the outer door was rendered inoperable by a blast or the elevator shaft collapsing or something, their only way out would be through this escape hatch over here. That escape hatch was seen as an infiltration risk by the Air Force, so they backfilled it with about 50 tons of sand. And missileers quickly realized whoever opened that would likely be crushed by sand and killed, so they nicknamed that the Deputy Killer, because the commander wasn't going to open it. Beyond that, once they dug through that sand, because they were equipped with shovels from the under the floorboards as well, they would have to break through about 4 inches of pavement that, because it leads up to the parking lot. Getting out of that, they would emerge into probably a nuclear wasteland. They didn't have much hope for themselves if they had to use that hatch. They also joked that because a nuclear blast created extremely high heats, a direct blast would most likely turn that sand to glass, so they'd hand off a glass cutter to the replacements quite often. These have seen a few different configurations. The carpet isn't original. These drapes were put in because there was a lot of exposed wires and it was extremely echoey down here. And the current facilities have the commander station over where the bed is and vice versa, with the commander and the deputy commander on the same rail. Because the keys are much closer proximity, there's now 4 keys with 2 keys per person.
Mm.
And they're actually trying to replace all of these because this equipment's all from the 60s, so it's extremely hard to break into, but it's also extremely expensive to maintain. So there's a contract out for Northrop Grumman to make all of this digital displays, make it all 21st century equipment. But generally, if you were to see one of the active maps, it'd look just like this, but with the commander station over there.
Question. What would happen if one of them refused to put in a key?
It would launch.
Yep, no launch.
And there was a lot of talk about that. For that reason, missileers had some pretty strenuous oversight to see if they would actually turn the key. And it was a very stressful job, so they could they had to get very regular psychological evaluations, and they could only serve here for about 3 years at a time. I'll let everybody look around a little bit, and then we'll
head back up to the surface. Please feel free to take as many pictures as you'd like.
You always come over here and take a picture. Command console. Don't touch, but stand.
Try to get this. Crazy.
Did you get enough pictures?
Huh?
You never get enough.
I never get enough pictures.
So this is a nicer one of them. And then some that are much smaller. The other thing is if it took a design so that it would not take a direct hit, but it would take a hit from a few miles or a little ways away
Mhm.
and survive. But if this took a direct hit, or a nuclear weapon, it would be
You want to sit in the chair?
You can't sit in anything.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. You said can't, don't touch nothing. Okay.
because that's what they decided to put in there. And let's slip down the other end.
All right, as soon as everybody's ready, we'll head back
Okay.
up.
Okay. I just want to get back here so I can take pictures
Microwave,
when we're
see how
walking
you
backwards.
Everything they need. Sounds like use that as a bathroom.
Pass.
Again, watch your head as you're coming through this hallway and watch your step bend.
Okay, I'm coming. I'm coming.
You don't want to climb back up?
No.
Is this the normal elevator that they normally used?
That's the only
For
elevator
every
there
day?
is, yeah.
Okay.
Unless they want to use the ladder, which the facility managers and chefs would often just stick whatever they were taking down on the elevator and race it on the ladder, but generally the elevator was what everybody used.
Okay.
The other joke the missileers use is the nuclear detonation to create about a 150-foot divot in the ground. There's so many wires attached to the capsule that sit there and bounce. But it would just be destroyed too.
Yeah, and the payloads of the Russian warheads especially, if one actually struck on the ground right above the capsule, it would probably just tear the whole thing out.
It would just be a big.
So what you're saying is that if this thing took a direct hit, it's gonna go bye-bye.
Yep.
Huh.
But in the 60s when they designed it, it was designed for a near miss.
Oh, yeah.
Because they didn't think the Russians were that accurate.
And part of the reason they buried it so deep is because once it hit nearby, ideally the blast would just go over the top, and most of the blast would be channeled over the site, with very little of it actually going down and into the capsule, being stopped by that main door.
Kinda sounded like something broken. Oops.
Alright, that does it for the tour. If you're here for the full day, so feel free to look up the map up here.
Oh, wow, okay.
After you came in. Great, really appreciate the tour. Of course.
So that's the ladder he's talking about.
Yeah, that's the ladder by the elevator.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. All right. Thank you very much.
Of course, thanks for
Do you
coming
want
in.
to get enough pictures in here?
I did.
Okay.
So up here they have the cooks in the spot.
Are we allowed to walk back there and stuff?
Up to the construction area.
Oh, okay.
The showers and this one, there's a new exhibit on a construction.
Oh, this is actual bathroom.
Well, it's built into for the
Ah,
site.
oh, it was the one, yeah,
Yeah.
got you.
I'm just trying to figure out where all their bedrooms were.
Boy, makes you want to, we gotta watch war games again, huh?
Yes. It does.
Yeah, there's stuff in it. These are the cables they were talking about that run out from here to the missile silos that launch the weapons. They have pressures. Yeah,
That's probably the
they
reason
still
why
use them.
I'm commissioned now, because that was.
Well, that's not in use, clearly.
I wonder what makes you think about that.
There are just as many nuclear weapons on alert in Russia and the United States as there were at the end of the Cold War.
Most
New weapons are
flexible,
being designed.
most responsible.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Pay attention to what the other people are doing, so you're not
Most
blocking.
survivable.
Did you see that?
Wow.
Yeah. You say tough shit, right?
Yeah.
You want your country protected or not?
Funny. Nobody wants them, but as soon as you put them in, they're farmers and everybody like, this is my missile.
Yeah, yeah.
They're like, they call the base, hey, somebody's out here.
Yep.
Inside your sensors.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of friends are missileers. Do stuff. Alright, you guys go, you see what I see? You wanna look back there?
Next.
Well, I guess we don't have a choice. Good.
Oh, private access. Anything else?
First room.
Okay, I'm gonna use this.
Okay.
You guys wanna wait? You guys go?
No.
Over here.
Huh. I remember Caster Weinberger when I was in the Army, he was there. He was in our chain of command. Alright. Are you good, babe?
Yeah, did you want to look inside here?
Pick up the phone and push a button. Yeah, I don't want to pick up the phone.
Hey, Mama, my FM said that you called. I've been out on an alarm.
Everything okay? Be careful out there.
Just the usual. Some rabbit or pronghorn tripping the outer zone alarm. Always one that's a pain to get to.
Well, how did not keen on your
These recordings are based on the stories and likely experiences. Likely experiences. Oh. Twitch. His movies. I bet you there you won't find war games.
Good afternoon.
Funny.
Pretty good, how are you? Would you like to tour the capsule today?
Sure.
Are either of you
Hey,
military or
looking,
foreign?
but battleship. I have lots of family in the military, but not.
You'll be 16 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And tour starts at 2 o'clock, so you've got about
27 minutes. And we have everything inside. We're trying to find back over here.
My what?
Hey, I'm hard to scan.
You're fine.
I tend to be in the way.
Thank you.
So these are where the cables went out, over here where the poles are.
Birdie doing out here?
What birdie? Well, that's one of the antennas for communication.
See, he's still in the Air Force now. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I heard that. He said we both are. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
So they weren't bad.
No, not at all. Decent kids raised with friggin' morals, respect. And that's exactly why, because they had discipline. I still got the video, no glasses on, so we're just walking around recording this. Pretty crazy, huh? Pretty cool. I'm glad we got to see this. Now it puts the whole thing together.
Always interesting.
We saw the missiles, we saw the outside, now we saw the inside.
Well, what was interesting also is that it took two of these control centers.
Yeah,
to
didn't know that. But of course, that's not always the case. Like if one was down for maintenance or something, right? Then they give the control to just this one. But I didn't know that. And even that dude knew it, you know, that Air Force guy. So, pretty cool. And he says, if you got to turn them at the exact same time, so that means you got to have communications. This, the backyard. Here's our backyard. Yeah, that's pretty dang cool. Yeah, definitely, man. Wyoming, because the Wyoming state owns this. And it even the map says, what it say? It's highly recommended. And then South Dakota, and then the federal government says you can't even go in our building. We'll show you the outsides of it. It wouldn't have been that way if... Never mind. So we'll have to look at the brochures and see what that is again. That was pretty cool. And this one was till 2005 this guy was operational.
He was the last one out, first one in, last one out.
Yeah. And you know why I've never seen that sign? I told you how many times I've been on interstate, right?
Yeah.
Because they were still active. They weren't advertising. Right? That's why. Because I'm like, I've never seen that sign. Well, because they were still they want people knowing about it. All right, that was the cool, what was it called? Quebec 1 Missile Alert Facility. Where are we at? Cheyenne, Wyoming. Cheyenne, Wyoming. And this is June 4th, 2021.